welcome to our Twillow Fusion series. Today, I am so honored to have these beautiful human beings with me as they are part of our teacher team. We have Michelle and Ramsey and Jennifer, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. So we are teachers with the Twillow Lifestyle Academy. I am founder of the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. I'm Tanis Coughlin. I'm a Reiki master, crystal master. I am Celtic Shamanic High Priestess and a Galactic Ambassador and a channel. So I am thrilled to be sharing this space, this energetic space with these amazing people. And I will have them introduce themselves. Today, we are going to be talking about relationships. So Michelle, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Michelle Marie, and I am both a Vedic and Western astrologer, as well as a tarot and oracle card reader. You can find me at astrologicaltarot.com. And I'm really excited to talk about relationships today because that is one of the main things that I deal with in my practice is, when am I going to get married? When am I going to have children? What can I, how can I be a better husband or wife or partner? So I'm actually excited to hear what you guys have to say too, because I know it's going to be fabulous.
Awesome. Lots of fun. And Ramsey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ramsey. I'm a medium. I also do energy healing and spiritual counseling. And I'm overly excited to be at the show. Hopefully, you're definitely going to enjoy it. Over here at Twillow Lifestyle Academy, we make things done.
There we go.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jerkowski, and I am a teacher and practitioner with Twillow Lifestyle, Twillow Academy. I also have my own practice, my holistic self counseling, where I do psychotherapy, counseling, intuitive life coaching. I do some work with the Enneagram and human design, and like to bring in my Reiki, alchemy, EFT, TFT, all that kind of fun stuff into my practice to really bring a holistic healing approach.
Awesome. So you can see we've got a wonderful team today to talk about relationships. So we're not just talking about romance today. We're talking about navigating those relationships, right? And how do we heal relationships and those kinds of things as well. All right. So if you guys have any questions about that, please feel free to put them in. I'll start us off with a few. So the basis of all relationships are the one you hold with yourself. So how much do you really know yourself? Now let's start off with Jen for this.
Sure. I think this is the foundation for everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
That famous saying, know thyself, and then adding on to that, to thine own self be true, right? What does that look like? What does that really mean? How can we authentically be who we are, to the core of who we are? Can we, sit and be honest with those shadow parts of us? Can we acknowledge the things that scare us within ourselves? Are we able to, own all of the different parts of who we are and how we show up and understand how they guide what we do, how we feel, how we think? And then from there, we can then decide, okay, of all of this, what serves us and what moves us towards what we want in our lives, and what doesn't serve us that we need to work on and reflect on in order to grow and continue to move in that direction. And it all starts with knowing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And the learning process for ourselves is all about what's good for us and what's not, because that's a bit elusive from time to time too, right? We think we know what we want, and then we get into a situation where we're actually getting that, and then you're like, oh, that's not what I expected, right? And it's also we need to remember that that's a reflection of us in terms of when we start to get to know ourselves, we start to get to know what we need and what we don't, and that's part of the process. And we are here to learn lessons. That is our main purpose here. And sometimes those lessons involve other people. In fact, most times our lessons involve other people. And, there's that soul contract thing, right? We have soul contracts with people in our lives to learn those lessons, especially the big ones, right? So that's something that know thyself is a big part of, is you learn the lessons, and that's how you start to know yourself. Ramsey, do you want to talk about that? About how much do you know yourself?
How much? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I ever knew myself till recently, to be honest. I navigated life on autopilot. I grew up through a civil war, had a lot of trauma going around the whole country, if it's directly or indirectly. So I was kind of pre-programmed to just survive. And through my pre-programming, I thought this is what it is. This is who I am. Oh, what are you talking about? And then things started to go a bit off in my life, and then I started to realize that it's happening more often. And then that's where the questioning started to come in. And the more I questioned, the more I realized I don't know who I was, until I started to dig deep inside and analyze every little piece of me, until I changed myself completely into who I know who I am today, because that person is not the same person that was there a couple of years ago. It is okay. I'm not. It is a painful journey. It is not easy. The pain comes from our attachment to ego. It's not our attachment to self, and what we believe our self is, and that's where the pain comes in. But once we let that go, we do come to a realization that our whole beingness, if you allow it to, if you start to take these out, our whole beingness start to shine out, and then everything starts to flow so much easier, and it really becomes a beautiful life to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you start to get to know yourself, right? Yeah. Things flow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Michelle, how about you? How much do you know yourself?
Well, it wasn't until I got to know myself that I started attracting healthy people, because I know you guys know a little bit about my background. I was not raised in a healthy environment, and it wasn't until I was able to get away from that environment and practice self-care and do the remedies and the spiritual, remedies, practices, mental, emotional, etc., and get better and kind of find my balance in the world, that I was able to attract the right people and person. Because I love my husband. He's so cool. And he's and of course we connected through yoga. So, what a better way to connect through, just doing, those very helpful practices. And Ted Bricks, I just want to say a shout out to him. Good to see you. Hey, and Jacqueline, welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show. You're welcome to ask questions and join us in the discussion. But my life was basically controlled by my father. My father controlled my mother, my sister. He kept us very isolated. He controlled our money. He controlled what we said, what we thought, what we believed. And it wasn't until I stepped away from that and said no, and it almost killed me, that I was able to start healing and then develop who I was. It's like, oh, okay, so who is this person other than the person who was just trying to please these other people? And that's why I got into these practices, because I wanted to find out who I was. That's why I got into astrology at a young age, and then it just kept going with it. It's why I got into the tarot and oracle cards, to develop my intuition and really practice that side of myself that had been tamped down for so long. And it, like my husband explains it, it's like you're like a basketball that's been held under the deep end of a pool, and as soon as you let go, it was like, pew, it was. And then my intuition started clicking in, my empathy started coming back. I mean, the real me started coming forward, but it had been tamped down for so long that I didn't really get to express it. But once I did, I get to attract amazing people like you guys. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I'm really loving life right now because I'm around, spiritual practitioners and healers and just good energy. So.
Yeah, I have to agree. Once you start to step into who you really are, and a lot of us are just programmed. We're programmed to be people pleasers, especially when you're an empath. You know, for me, that was a big thing. Being an empath and a physical empath, it's super important when you're little that everyone around you is happy, because otherwise you don't feel good and you don't know why. You just know that when everybody's happy, you feel good. So you really try to do this people pleaser role, and that really becomes part of who you are at that stage. But that's why, you know, with my work, I really try very hard to help people understand how they are interpreting the world, because that's what we're doing, is interpreting the world through interaction with energy when we're talking about being an empath. And so when we have that, we can get really overstimulated with all of the signals that are coming, and we tend to just kind of do what we can to, it's almost like feeling like you're putting out fires all the time when you're a people pleaser, right? You're constantly trying to put out fires for everybody else, when really it's really none of our business what everybody else is going through. It's all about us. We're responsible for our own actions and reactions. We're not responsible for everybody else's actions and reactions. So yes, we're responsible to act in a way that is compassionate and full of love for everybody, and, you know, that kind of thing. But we're not responsible. We're not responsible for their reaction. If we're doing it with love and compassion, their reaction is their. We've had a comment that's quite funny. Let them burn. So we're chuckling about that, coming from a self-proclaimed witch. So that's why it's a bit ironic. Anyways, so we want to be people pleasers so that we feel good. And so, you know, but we're not responsible for their stuff. We're only responsible for ours. And so when we act responsibly for ourselves in relationship, it's about being self-reflective and really, okay, so what is my reaction? What is that saying about me? What do I need to work on in me? My reaction to the situation, right? Because, you know, you could have the same situation and 5 people in that situation, and they all deal with it entirely differently because of where they're coming from, what their programming is, how much work they've done on themselves, how well they know themselves, right? So it's such a big piece. Right, Jen?
Yeah, most definitely. It's, you know, so much of what, you know, we've all shared, it resonates deeply, right? And so, you know, Ramsey talking about that, you know, death to self. And I know in the Sufi tradition, right, it's that die before you die. And what does that really mean? And what does that really look like? And I love the example of the butterfly, right? Within the caterpillar is all of the genetic makeup of the butterfly. But in order for the caterpillar to become the butterfly, it has to go into itself. It has to form that cocoon. And within that cocoon, it has to completely dissolve in order to be remade. And what's fascinating is through studies now, they've found that with the butterfly, it actually has the memories of being the caterpillar. And so it's not that we become something entirely different, or that we leave all of our past behind. It all comes forward with us and we carry it with us. And yet we are fully transformed. And that is an absolutely beautiful thing. But that in-between process, like Ramsey said, is really hard, right? And so there is that piece of, you know, am I willing to really look at, you know, who I am and what that means? All of my conditioning and all of the things I've been through, right? And so things like human design, and I know Michelle can talk much more to the Vedic astrology and stuff like that, but, you know, why are we here? What are we here to do? What are those contracts? What, you know, is within our genetic makeup of why we show up how we do? And how can we honor the truth of who we are and what we're here to be in a way that, you know, resonates and allows us to spread our wings and fly.
Yeah, and the symbolism, of course, of the butterfly is always beautiful, because, you know, it's also about us, because those past experiences are what make us who we are. So, you know, with the butterfly going into the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, right? That the stuff they're made of still stays there. It just makes up who you are when you transform. And so going in to do the work, and when we talk about the work, it's about knowing yourself. It's about, allowing yourself to be that authentic light, the divine being that's inside. And how do we show up in the world to do that? I know Ramsey and I have had conversations about this on his open mic in terms of, ego versus self and, attachment versus love and those kinds of things. So do you want to speak to that a little bit, Ramsey, about the attachment versus love? And because those attachments and relationships in our lives make up who we are, and we bring our experiences with those relationships forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talked about it, and I recall, is that we were talking about attachment, and attachment is your attachment to your image, an image that you portray yourself to the world. See, what we do everywhere we go, we change our image. We go into a supermarket, we change our image into a buyer. We go to restaurants, we want to be served with that image that we put on. And in a relationship, it's the same thing. And when you go to work, so we have a compilation of images that we deal with, and we're attached to them. And when you're attached to it, then there is no love. It's just you're in a transactional mode to satisfy that image that we have in front of us. So if we take all these images out and we play ourselves after we know who we are, and just like being the human being that we are in every situation, then there is no attachment. Then the love actually comes out and it plays directly with the other love from the other side, and it makes it easier and less painful. All these relationships that we deal with on a daily basis, if it's your boss, your partner, the person at the grocery store. So once you start coming from a single source, your heart, then those images and the attachment to them falls apart, and life becomes much, much easier. And Kimberly agrees with that 100%. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, they fall away in terms of that, right? We shed those layers or those masks that we sometimes wear if we can get to that true self of who we are. Michelle, did you want to add something about that? And the astrology behind that? Because that's part of how your natal chart makes up who you are, right? So how do we find out who we really are?
Well, the science of light shows you how close you are to the light. And Ramsey made a really good point that once you take all the masks off, we're all source. And when we get to that stage, we've hit the Ananda Kosha, which is the deepest part of ourselves, where the internal Atman sits. And we become one with all because we see God in all, from the lamppost to the tree to the little bird to our enemy, which is the hardest person to see God in. But it's also very healing because, this birth's rogue could be next birth's saint. And that's what you look at the charts for. So you look at the natal chart and you see, okay, this is what this person was like when they entered the plane. This is the energy. Yogananda literally called it the energy. That's the science of light, shows you the pockets of light within that individual and where the blocks are that are keeping them from Atman. Okay. And we're in a time right now called the Kali Yuga, which is the dark age. It's the Tamasic age. It's highly physical. The gods are not walking around among us just in plain sight going, enlightenment, here you go. That's not what's going on. It's not the Satya Yuga. Okay. That's coming though. So we can look forward to it. But the reason our souls chose to incarnate in this particular time and on this plane, which is Mritya Loka, the plane where all things die, it's very transitional. It's not real because nothing is permanent. The only thing permanent is spirit. So we all came here to basically chip away at our egos. And what you can see between the birth chart and the dharmic chart, which is the 9th divisional chart, is, okay, what parts of ourselves have we chosen to chisel off? And sometimes if you're going, like, let's say Ashtamamsha, you're going 8 signs, it's like, oh, this is going to be rough. If you're going 1 sign, it's like, oh, actually finances are going to help you kind of get through this. If you're going 3 signs, it's going to take some self-effort. And it just depends on the house and the sign. But what it shows you is how difficult it's going to be, when it's going to happen. And relationships are the most important element of the Navamsha, because your spouse is part of your Dharma, because they are here to teach you something. They're here to show you the good and the bad, so to speak, aspects of yourself that are keeping you from divine. I mean, this is a plane of opposites. You know, we're all one, but we're here to, again, they show us where our ego is standing in the way of Ananda or bliss. So it's through good and it's through bad. Some of us need a good kick in the pants. Some of us need a hug. You know, it just depends on where our soul is at. So that's kind of what the Dharmic chart reveals. It also shows, you know, when people are going to get married and what kind of relationship it is. And Tanis, we looked at your chart and you got married on your Rahu Ketu axis, which is the definition of a karmic relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it can tell us that. And then, you know, there's other charts that show children. That's the D7. A parental lineage and ancestral lineage is the D12. So you can look at those kind of relationships and, you know, what blocks are there. It was very healing for me to look at my D12 and see 2 malefics on my moon, which represents mother, and go, oh, that's why. You know, she's dealing with this very difficult energy. And it's a lot easier to kind of understand where people are coming from, even if what they're doing is wrong, when you see that they're going through a battle and it's right there. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating.
The main thing that Ramsey said was you have to be born again. And Jennifer said you have to be born again. And I think it was in 3 John in the New Testament, it says, verily, verily, you must be born again to enter the kingdom of God. Like you have to basically shed this personality, this jiva, as we call it in the Vedas, and then enter into Ananda or bliss by basically giving it up. So, okay.
Right. And death is a transformation, right? And so it's part of that sort of transformation. We're transforming our soul by being here. Yeah. Tamara, we're all huggers, so you've come to the right place. She says my butt has been kicked enough. I'm in line for hugs. Well, we're all huggers, so you're in the right place. So harder online, but you know, energetic hugs are good. Jen, do you want to talk about human design where that's concerned? Because you can see a lot of that stuff in human design as well.
Yeah, for sure. So what's really amazing with human design is that we really get to see what we were created for and how we show up. It shows us all about where we're open to conditioning, where the ego gets involved, where we step off our line to try to fill things that we feel we're lacking, and how we often will go to different experiences that maybe aren't the best for us in order to kind of try to fill all of those things that we think are holes within us, right? On the relationship aspect of it, it really, one, helps us to have a better relationship with ourselves, in the sense that if I understand my type and my design, I know that I need the recognition and invitation for big things in my life. If I try to push it, it's going to fail. That's just the way that my design is, my type is. Whereas somebody who is, say, a generator, like they have to respond. And so if they don't have something to respond to and they're trying to push it, then they're going to run into walls and feel like, you know, they're not able to gain that success and that satisfaction in their lives. And so really being able to have that self-compassion and saying, okay, like this is how I need to be with myself. And it gives us permission to do that. Those things that we kind of inherently maybe know, but have been fighting against all of our lives. And then on the relationship aspect, it really does look at, you know, how do I connect with this other person, right? So do I have, you know, is there dominant lines where I can see that this person is able to kind of take over and I really understand where they're coming from and I'm able to kind of fit in with that? Or are there lines where, you know, maybe we both have something in that line, and so these are going to be areas where we kind of bump heads, and we need to really understand, okay, like we each have something to give here, and can we have that ebb and flow, give and take? And then there's lines where we complete each other, right? And in those lines, we're going to have a lot of flow, and there's that kind of electromagnetic connection. between us because we're bringing that in. And so, really understanding how our charts fit together can help us with the dynamics of the relationship and really see where we're going to struggle and where we're going to connect and how we can navigate that.
Well, and you do a relationship chart, a compatibility chart, which is pretty cool. And I think Michelle does the same with the astrology. Do you want to talk about the astrology compatibility, and then we'll talk about the human design compatibility? Because you have different charts for those, right, Michelle?
Yes, you do. Like I mentioned, what you do is you look at what's going on in the birth chart and you see where the planets move next and what sign they go into. And some of the signs are compatible, some of the houses are more compatible, and some are rough. So, and they become activated during what's called your planetary Mahadasha. So, and then you have subdashas after that. So the planetary Mahadasha is basically what planet is driving the car right now. Like for instance, Tanis and I were both in Saturn Mahadasha. So we can expect some blocks, some restrictions, some karmic lessons, things like that going on in our lives right now. Whereas if you were in Jupiter Mahadasha, for example, and he's well placed in your chart, you can expect pretty good times. Okay. But if Jupiter moves, let's say he's really well placed in your Rasi, which is your birth chart, and then he goes into debilitation, that can show a major life shift. An example would be, let's say Jupiter is exalted or in dignity in the Rashi in a house of wealth, like the second house, and then he moves into, let's say, the ninth house, which is spiritual asceticism, and he's debilitated in your Navamsha. That would show someone who was maybe born into a rich family, had a good education, had all of the things that they needed and wanted, but then realized that this that did not lead to their Ananda, their bliss in life, and they moved into the path of a spiritual ascetic, a very simple life without the family or the distractions. They dedicate themselves to God. So that would be an extreme example of someone going from living in the material realm to moving into the spiritual realm. And that's a big jump to take for a lot of people. But it just depends on how far Jupiter moves. For some people, it could be, well, they've done this in a past life. We're just going to put them in a rich family, but they've done this before because of their dharma. So it moves like, let's say 9 or 3 houses, which is supportive of that. If it moves 8 or 6, major life transformation, changes, illnesses, accidents, things like that are going to have to snap them out of it. So that's kind of the dichotomy between those two particular charts. And there's a lot that goes into it. And there's also something called the Ashtaka Varga, which goes even deeper into the chart, that tells you what's going on materially in your life and when you're going to be supported and not supported, etc. So.
And so, and then when we look at the compatibility chart with Jen for human design, you really look at the two blueprints, right? The 2 human design blueprints for each person. And it's really obvious. I know you've done it for us. And, it was fun to see, sort of, and it really helps you to understand your partner, because when you're in a relationship with somebody, understanding what their motivations are and all of that stuff is super important as well. So, and we can maybe talk about love languages and whatnot in a minute, but tell us a little bit more about that type of reading, Jen, when you're looking at the 2 on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, we've done those charts, and I think that we can do it for couples, friendship, whatever. We can also do family units, right? And what does the family look like together? And I'm sure Michelle can as well, right? And pulling all of that together. And, you can do it as an individual, right? Are these people compatible? Does this work? Yeah. What are the areas of conflict that you're going to have to resolve? Is there areas where you're going to have to agree to disagree, and that's just going to be the way it is? And are there things where, you complete each other? And so, you can look at it also with the transits and where things are at any given moment. I think one time when we pulled for ours, and in that current transit, it was, the money making one. And so we're like, okay, what do we need to get going here in order to, bring that about? And so, it is pretty fascinating in the sense that, it takes it from being this personal thing that we see everything through our previous experiences and through all of the judgments and labels and all of the things that we've held on to that we think are part of who we are, but they're really just ego definitions of past experience.
Yep.
Right? And it almost depersonalizes it in that sense. It's like, no, this is how this person is, this is their makeup, this is how they show up. And if they do something that triggers me, it's my stuff that I'm being triggered with. And I need to take a look at that and figure out what is it in my experiences, my ego that's feeling wounded in this moment, right? Or is it that this is just something that we do so differently, we're not going to necessarily agree, and that's okay, right? But it allows us that moment of pause where we can kind of go, okay, I don't have to be mad at you about this. This is actually something we can figure out because it's less personal.
It's kind of like business, right? When you're in business and you sort of take that little bit of person out of it and you make it the process, right? Then it becomes easier to work through those kind of issues. And so that's kind of what human design does in that way, right? And astrology too, I would say, because we are responsible for our work, for doing our work going forward. But there is stuff that is out of our control in terms of our birth chart. This is how we were born. So how do we do that shadow work on the stuff that we feel insecure about and that kind of thing? Ramsey, how do you work with your clients to help them work through some of that shadow work that comes up, right, in these charts and stuff?
I don't have charts, so shadow works just pop on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They do pop because we all have them, and even after we work on ourselves for a long time, they still continue to come up, but at a lesser intensity. So they're smaller, and we can deal with them without the help of others. Now, one of the what do you call it? One of the things is to pinpoint it, and by that you have to ask the question. So why is it like that? Or what is driving me to do this? Or how come I can't pick up the phone and answer someone when it's ringing and I don't know the number? So what would happen? And the answer that we give to ourselves usually is a fabricated answer to cover something else beneath that. And then we take that answer and then we dig one more level into it and we ask more questions about that. And then you start to come to a realization that there's always a fear underlying all these little emotions that we're, and all these fears are holding us from doing something that we truly love. But we don't know that we love doing them because we're too busy telling ourselves that we don't in order to mask something else. And one user was asking, how do you know what's holding you back? It's you have to dig deeper on every answer that you give yourself on that particular topic. Mm-hmm. And because every answer has an underlying fear-based situation, and then it goes further and further. One of the things that I realized doing with my work is that I'd rather talk to people than send them messages because I had a hard time writing. And I realized that my spelling is not good. And I'm so embarrassed. Here I am, I'm embarrassed. I can't even write. I need spell check to make sure that I have it correctly so I don't write. I'd rather call someone. And when I came to that realization, I started to write. And slowly, I got over that issue because that issue is non-existent. So what if I made a spelling mistake? It's not a big deal. So that little image of me having everything perfect, because I like everything to be perfect, doesn't exist anymore. So it's not gonna get hurt. There is no fear of me hurting my image of my perfectness. So that goes away, and I'm able to move forward without having to even think about it anymore.
Yeah, because we're perfectly imperfect being human.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
We are imperfect, and we're meant to be. So that shadow stuff it just shows us where we can work on things, which is great. in that way, right? It's a gift in many ways. The analysis you were talking about, it brings me back to like the root cause analysis again in business, and I actually bring that into my clients' sessions a lot. Let's ask the 5 whys. Why does that trigger you, right? And like you said, you get to like this base fear, and then I usually ask, what's the first time you remember feeling that? And then that usually comes down to a relationship of some kind. So when you actually look at that relationship, and I'm not a psychologist like Jen, I just deal with the energy that you carry in your field around that. So when we do that, and then we often will feel tension in our body in different areas when we think about that person. And that's usually where we're holding that denser energy in our field. So how do we release that, right? Then it brings us to forgiveness and working through the emotions and allowing ourselves to be imperfect, and I often use the Ho'oponopono for that. I know Jen uses that a fair bit as well. And we've had numerous discussions about it and how we're actually we're all one. So when we use forgiveness, it's about forgiving ourselves and healing the relationship as a whole. And so there we go. It all helps you to get to know yourself, right? And doing the Ho'oponopono is a wonderful exercise in that. And I'm a big proponent of doing it in the mirror, because you would be amazed at how much it will help you relieve things like shame and guilt, right? I mean, we all feel badly about something that we've done, even though, everybody does stuff. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says things they regret later. But if we choose to hold on to them, then we're just weighing ourselves down. And we can't change the past. We can alter how we see things so that we can change how we react with the future, how we react to future interactions with people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can, or gifts we can give to ourselves. So perfectionist is a challenge to overcome, that's for sure. I'm still working on it. I know it's silly, but it's like, if I can't accomplish something to the best of my ability, I go into this mode where I just avoid it altogether. Yeah, I think a lot of us do that, right? We do the putting our head in the sand, because sometimes it's too hard to look at the stuff that we don't like about ourselves. And that's kind of part of why we're here, is to bring that stuff up and feel the emotions around that. Jen, did you want to add something to that? I think that's really your area.
I deal with this so often with clients. And so bringing in kind of the Enneagram side of this, looking at the worldview that we have, looking at the false self that we hold on to, and where does this perfectionist piece really come from? And so often it comes from one of the lies that we tell ourselves, right? And it's about our value. I'm valuable if. And this is the thing, it's that if, right? And it's either if I can give something, if I can do something, or if I can have something. And so as long as I have these things, I'm valuable. As long as I do this service, I'm valuable. As long as I can give this thing, right? And so what ends up happening is our value comes completely outside of us. And then we feel like I have to do it perfect. I have to do it better. Every time it has to be better because I have to prove my value. And then what ends up happening is we fail because we can't meet the expectation that we've held for ourselves. Right? And this idea of perfection is so arbitrary, because what's perfect for me is not going to be what's perfect for you. Mm-hmm. And what's perfect for you is not going to be what's perfect for Michelle or Ramsey or Kimberly or Kara or anybody who's on with us right now. Right? And the thing is what we perceive as perfect is completely different. So we will never be able to meet this idea of perfection. And this is what comes back to know thyself. What is the lie that I tell myself? That my value is somehow coming from outside of myself. And now how do I bring that back and see my innate value for being? because that's truly the value that I hold. And then however I show up is the best that I can do in that moment with the knowledge I have and the understanding capacity I have in that moment. And sometimes that's going to be better than other times, and that's okay.
Yeah. And so it really comes down to expectations. And we often bring those expectations into the relationships in our lives, right? We, and many perfectionists will expect more of themselves than they do of other people. But then that becomes a stressor in a relationship as well, right? And we also have high expectations of our relationships then. Even though we don't intend to, we still hold ourselves in that higher expectation. We hold ourselves to like that perfect thing. But like you said, it's a moving target. It's all our perception. But if we're holding someone else to that in terms of our expectations, like we're setting that person up for failure in our eyes. And so how do we start to turn that around? For me, it's like about like, let's look at that person with love and bring that love into it, right? And sometimes it's a communication thing. Sometimes you're just talking totally different languages. And I know that book, Love Languages, is pretty cool for that, right? Because people do express love in different ways. Who wants to speak to that piece, the love languages? Because I know
I can if not. Well, Michelle's got it. Perfect. Go for it, Michelle.
Yeah, go ahead. You can both speak to it. We'll pick Michelle first. Yeah.
Well, the relationship that I'm in right now, just personally, is very different than my past relationships because he likes physical touch. He's very warm, and I'm not used to being touched in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, is my past, and so that took some getting used to. But I found like, oh, this is the way he likes to be loved. Okay. And we got through it. And so, and I'm all about cuddling and all the other stuff. So it's good. But for him, he realized later that mine is words of affirmation, because like we were talking about that perfectionist piece, I was basically told I was a worthless bleedy bleed bleed, fill in the blank expletive growing up by a very abusive father and a narcissistic mother. And so I didn't have a lot of love growing up. And I think like what you said, Tanis, it goes back to our childhood. Where is the wound? You have them go through and go, okay, where you feel this pain when you talk about them. Now, when's the last time you felt that pain? And it usually goes back to something that we developed in the years that we were just kind of figuring this place out as children. And so the love languages, and this is just my opinion, and Jennifer, you can let me know if you think this as well, is the things that we were missing. Like if it's acts of service, you've had to do everything your whole life and you just exhaust yourself with that. And it's so nice when someone comes in and helps you. If it's physical touch, you weren't hugged a lot. You weren't told I love you, or, you weren't hugged a lot. You weren't given a lot of physical, attention. If it was, or you were neglected in his case. If it's words of affirmation, you didn't get a lot of that growing up. So I think we go to the areas where our wounds are and we try to heal them through other people when we need to be doing some of that inner work. And it's finding that balance and not putting all of your happiness and your healing on your partner, and instead going in and saying, okay, they're making me feel this way. What is it in me that I need to change to heal and to kind of work through this? Because the whole point isn't to rely on them for that. It's to support each other and have an equal relationship. But what I think partners do is they show us where we're wounded, and it forces us to go in and find out, like, okay, what do I need to be doing? So,
well, and I think that that brings up a point that people often think, if they're coming out of a relationship, that they need to heal themselves before they go into the next one. And I think there's a certain amount of that, yes, because you need to find out who you are again. But there's also, like, we're never fully healed. So many times relationships are about that. How can you support each other through your individual healing, as opposed to and not rub up against each other? I don't know. Maybe that's just an opinion again as well. Jen, what are your thoughts on the love languages?
Well, I have to say, Michelle, I absolutely loved what you shared, and it was so bang on. And we study these things. We study love languages, attachment styles, Enneagram, whatever it is, right? Because we want to understand ourselves, but also because we want to understand the other person and we want to have this connection. And this piece of us that's longing for this other person to complete us, that is a part we have to heal, because that is never going to happen, right? It's really good to understand these things, to understand the attachment style, to understand the love languages, but it is imperative to not let them define your relationship and to define who you are. And so, this idea too of like jumping into another relationship, I think that it's really important to understand that every connection we have with another human being, with an animal, with an object, with
Yeah.
anything in our life is a relationship.
Yeah.
The connection that I have with my home and the environment that I'm in is a relationship. And so we are never without relationship. We can go and isolate in a cave all by ourselves, and we're going to have relationship with all of the different parts of us and all of the different things that show up, and in the environment in which we are in, and the food that we're going to eat, and that's all relationship. And so, whether you wait or don't wait for the romantic side of things, it's not as much of the issue as through any of these, am I working on the relationship with myself, right? And so, back to what Michelle was saying with the love languages piece, all of what we hold, part of it is our design and part of it is our conditioning. And there are going to be certain things within us that we were going to have no matter what, right? And Michelle can speak to that with the Vedic astrology piece too, right? Like there's certain things that we're going to experience. And it's just the way it is. And we have a choice on how we're going to respond to that. And a lot of the conditioning piece and the things that we experienced as children and the things we experience in relationships and all of that are going to impact that response. Unless we're able to step back and separate from it, do that inner work and be able to take that pause and go, okay, I have a choice right now. I can go back into the file room in my brain and pull out all of the things that this situation applies to and be like, yep, all these things justify why this is a horrible experience. Or I can go, new experience. How do I want to move forward? What do I want to do with this? And we have that choice at every moment. But we have to take the pause or we're going to miss that opportunity to make the choice.
Yeah, so that goes back to the let's respond instead of react, right? But working on some of the triggers can sometimes help us to start to respond instead of react. Have you found that, Ramsey, with your clients?
Yes. Reaction is a normal thing. From what I understood with my clearing is that every situation that we deal with has a memory, and that memory includes that strong emotion that comes with it. So every situation is a mirror of a previous situation. So what happened is our mind automatically takes the old piece out, and that emotion that got stuck in it comes out instantly without even us thinking about it. It's just like it's there. It's like, whew, voila, this is what's on the menu right now. And by dealing with those issues that happened in the past, with every one of them, a part of that emotion is actually released. We keep the memory of what had happened because you can never delete anything. It's there, it will always be there, but there's no emotions anymore attached to it. It's just a memory. It's a story that happened and we tell ourselves, or we don't, but it's there in our archives. So when a new event takes place, which is similar to a previous one that we actually dealt with, that's when we go back and act in that particular situation rather than react based on a previous instance and dragging all the previous emotions that has nothing to do with today's problem and just dumping them over there. Voila. And here's our buffet for today.
Yes.
It's really interesting once we get into releasing all these old trapped energies, because I can't remember who said it lodges in your body. It lodges everywhere. So as we release, then these pains will start to dissipate, will go away. The body feels lighter because you're not holding any more memories over your shoulders or in different parts of the bodies. So life becomes smoother to navigate, and of course, happier to be in.
Well, and that brings up the frequencies, right? Because I know there's 3 of us here that are Nukti practitioners, and with Nukti is an energy healing modality. It's a galactic one. And so our body remembers all of these things that have happened, right? And they remember it as a frequency. And this, we actually hold a certain vibration in the cytoplasm of the cells. And that cytoplasm has a frequency. So, you know, with the Nukti, we go in and we help the body to release the frequency of that trauma and grief. But that just shows you it's like right down to the cellular level, right? We hold all of the memory in our body of what's going on. So that's part of the energetic aspect of healing yourself, which heals relationships, is about let's work through releasing the energy pieces that are stuck in our field in the different layers, and reprogram the actual frequency of the body to be able to hold the higher vibrational emotions like love for self and others, right?
Absolutely.
Jen, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. So in the psychological world, there's even books out about that, right? The body keeps score, and how we actually, the body holds on to it. And so even if we do the work to release the memory of it and the emotions, the body is still going to react. And so you go into a situation and it triggers that. If you haven't done kind of that somatic work to really release it from the body's going to have that immediate reaction, and it's going to send those messages back to the brain and say, hey, whoa, danger, even if we're not, because the body is recognizing something in there. And when we look at things like, the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory and things like that, our autonomic nervous system and how it gets involved, right? And how we can move from a ventral vagus state of social engagement to either a sympathetic or a parasympathetic state or a dorsal state, right? For either in that heightened fight and flight state or that freeze place. And so what ends up happening is when we have trauma and things like that, we actually rewire our brain, and we are rewiring parts within us. And if we don't recognize that and do the work to bring those changes back, our body will actually, our physiology will actually look for opportunities to have those responses again, because it's what's wired in us now. And so it's really important to work from a very holistic kind of standpoint. And so when we bring that back to relationships, what's amazing is, we get into a relationship with somebody and it's wonderful and it's that honeymoon stage and everything is great. And then all of a sudden the person does something and it triggers something in us and we don't even know what's going on. And now all of a sudden we're responding to that with the other person, and the other person is going, whoa, I didn't do, what are you talking about? And now something in them is triggered. And now we have what I like to call pain bodies coming up and just feeding off of each other, right? And the who we truly are and who our partner truly they're not there anymore. And they're not the ones that are communicating. These pain bodies are just feeding each other, right? And it's not until we can step back and, again, know thyself. What just happened in me that caused this intense response that made me want to go and fight, right? Or to run away and hide. And whatever that is, that's what I have to deal with. And then if there's something that I have to address with my partner, great. I can address it in a way that is calm and collected and understanding of what I need. Right? Because how often do we come up to our partner and be like, you did this, and why did you do that to me? And you made me feel that. No, I made me feel this way as a response to what you said. And I was triggered because, and this is what I need you to do in the future. Can we do that? Cool. Very different dynamic but that's not what we're used to, right? And so really understanding that, you know, we can do all of the work, and we can figure it all out on the mental side, but we do have to deal with the physical side of our reactions too. And if we don't deal with that, those things are going to come up, and they're going to trigger things for us. And even if we say, oh yeah, I worked on that, it's still there because we haven't fully released it.
Yeah. Very, very good. It's true. We have to, you know, and in order to release it, we really have to allow ourselves to feel the emotions, right? Because it's about acknowledging the emotion, acknowledging how you, so awareness is everything, self-awareness. So really, when you start working with relationships and stuff, I think all of us, it's about being self-aware. So with Michelle, it's about, you know, look at your own chart, so that we can be aware of ourselves, because that informs how we treat others or how we go forward with others. And, you know, Ramsey's looking at the ego state and attachment style and all of that sort of thing in terms of getting to know ourselves and how do we bring ourselves into relationships, right? And human design, the same thing. When you're doing that kind of thing, that work, you're looking at how you interact with other people. So relationships are a lot about us and how we interact with others and how we're triggered, and how do we change how we're triggered in relationships, and what are our expectations of others going into relationships, right? And should we be expecting stuff of others, or should we just be looking at expecting better of ourselves, or expecting the best of what we can be of ourselves, and accepting the things that we cannot change? Would that be fair to say, guys?
Yeah.
Anybody have anything they want to add? Because we're coming up to the end of our time. How about one little phrase from each about summing that up, or, you know, a minute, because we're coming up to our hour. So yes, Michelle.
Okay. Well, I loved what Jennifer and Ramsey said, and you as well, about just the expectations and letting go of the ego. And then I love the pain bodies. Like I could see it happening. And there's this show, just to kind of sum it up, that my husband and I are watching, and it's called Married at First Sight. And I love watching the show with him because he can just psychoanalyze everything going on and make me laugh about it. But I'm sitting there like reverse engineering their charts, like, oh, okay, that was a trigger. That was a trigger. Oh, I wonder. And then the wound comes up of why they acted that way. And it's just so interesting to see. But
Yep.
I just, on a personal level, going through my own relationship journey, I attracted narcissists because that's what I was used to. I grew up in a home where that was just that. You talked about those energy, the wiring. Jennifer, you talked about the different wiring. I was wired to get into relationship after relationship with abusive narcissistic men because I was raised by one, and I misinterpreted that as love. And it wasn't until I broke that I was able to attract real love. But at first I had to love myself, find myself. Yeah. So it's the inner work that is required to do that. I have a lot of clients coming to me, especially men, who are like, I want to like this supermodel, Victoria's Secret, this, that, and the other. And what I tell them is, okay, what are you doing? Are you going to the gym? Are you making billions of dollars? Are you doing this? Because if that's what you want, you got to be it. And that's a more material level, but yeah, on a more just emotional level, it's like, okay, if you want these things in a partner, what have you done to work within yourself to attract that? And what have you healed within yourself to attract that? And I love that you all went into that. It was just great to hear.
Yeah, it's really about that mirror, right? We mirror if we can mirror what we want in a partner, we attract it. And it's that energy thing. I reckon expecting the best of ourselves, because everyone has their own issues, they try to work through, and we are all different. That's right. Yeah. Jen, did you want to share some final wisdom about relationships?
Yeah, no, I loved the conversation. So I just want to first say thank you to having me a part of this, and to everybody who's joined on with us. A couple of things that kind of came up for me. The first was as you were talking about the emotions, is I love Rumi's The Guest House, and that all emotions come as messengers. And sometimes those emotions are coming to clear us out for something new. And that's okay, right? But they're all there for a reason. And I think what we end up doing is we get caught up with the messenger, and we hold on to it, and we get mad at it, and we don't want to hear what it has to say. And yet, if we allowed ourselves to receive the message, we could then process it and move forward. And this comes back to that learning the lesson, like Michelle was saying, about getting into like the same kinds of relationships, right? Until we do the work, until we learn what these messages are telling us, we're going to keep getting them, right? And so it's better to take the time to see what the message is saying. So when you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a partner, a friendship, a family member, whatever it is, if you're getting these emotional things, what is the message? What is it telling you? If I'm angry right now, what is it telling me? I feel like there's an injustice somewhere. If I am sad right now, what is it telling me, right? I feel like somebody isn't treating me the way I want to be treated. Why do I want to be treated that way? And again, to the expectation piece, because this is huge, right? We put these expectations on other people. We generally almost never actually express what the expectation is with the person or come to any agreement about the expectation. And then we get really mad when they don't meet the expectation. Why do we do that to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of, well, they should just know, or they should just be like that, or they should just understand. Why? Why should they just know? We don't know. We're not mind reading. You don't know what they just, what they want. Why should they just know what you want? Right? And so really getting to know ourselves and then taking it to that next level, being able to express that in a way that is open and curious and able to just see what are the possibilities, right? But the moment that we put an expectation on and we just assume that the other person is going to understand it, we set ourselves up for hurt.
Yeah, for sure. And really, let's seek shared understanding. That's the biggest one, right? Seeking shared understanding shows love. Ramsey, final words.
You guys did a good job in closing. I'll leave you with one thing, is that this is not mine. I can't remember who wrote it. You are not who you think you are. You are who you think others think who you are. And with that, all the expectation and all the mind games and everything that we play comes from that. It starts and ends in our mind. There's nothing on the outside. So once we realign ourselves, all of this falls off, basically. And then we start talking through the word of love, because everything else is a facade. And with that, I think I'll close my sorry. And now I started blabbing.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all for coming and sharing your beautiful energy with us. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you so much, Tamara. And we just want to, relationships are very important for us as humans. So cherish your relationships. Cherish those people in your life, those special people. Don't forget to express your love. Okay. And let's just tell people where we can find you, Michelle.
Oh, great conversation today, guys. It was so great to hear about your practices and modalities and relationships. I really enjoyed it. My name is Michelle Marie. I am the owner and operator of Astrological Tarot. You can find me at astrologicaltarot.com, and just about every social media platform from TikTok to Facebook to Instagram is just Astrological Tarot. I'm glad I got all those names.
Yay. Awesome. And Jen, Ramsey.
Oh,
Yep.
I was waiting for Jen. And you can find me on ramseychiri.net. I'm a medium, energy healer, and a spiritual coach. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Jen?
And Jen?
Yeah, you can find me at myholisticself.com or myholisticselfcounseling.com or on Facebook at Holistic Self Counseling.
Beautiful. Thank you
And
all
of course
for being
on
here.
Twillow.
Yeah. Thank you all for being guests on here today. I just love you all. Your energy is beautiful, and for sharing it with us, with all of our viewers. And stay tuned, everyone, for these amazing teachers classes. We're putting together the schedule for September for the Twillow Lifestyle Academy. So be sure to keep an eye on twillowlifestyle.ca for all those classes that are coming up. And I'm Tanis Coughlin, founder of the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. And I'm so honored and blessed to have all of you here today sharing your energy. We're sending you lots of love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.